In the far reaches of the known universe, the Xeltar Union had carved out an empire that was feared across countless star systems. With their fleet of battleships, each armed with destructive technology capable of obliterating entire planets, they had instilled an unparalleled sense of dread throughout the galaxy. They were the Xeltar, the unchallenged terror of the galaxy, enforcing their will with swift and brutal efficiency. Their ships were massive dark structures that cut through space like shadows of doom. Each vessel was adorned with the emblem of the Xeltar Union, a symbol that spoke of their might and merciless resolve. Civilizations either bowed before them or were swept away into the cold, unforgiving vacuum of space. As the Xeltar fleet approached yet another system marked for conquest, their scanners picked up an anomaly. It was a small fleet of ships, unlike any they had encountered before. These ships were not grand in design, but were sleek and had an almost primitive look to them. The insignia on their hulls marked them as human, a species known but mostly disregarded as insignificant in the cosmic hierarchy. Admiral Vrox, the fleet commander of the Xeltar forces, observed the human ships with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "Commander Tail, have the humans ever ventured this far into our territory?" he asked, his voice echoing through the dimly lit command center. "No, Admiral. They are known to keep to their own sector. This is unusual," replied Commander Tail, his eyes locked on the flickering screens. "Prepare to engage. Let us remind them of their place," Vrox ordered with a cold, confident smirk. As the Xeltar ships maneuvered into attack formation, a sudden burst of communication came from the human fleet. It was a direct audio transmission, a rarity in interstellar conflicts where most species relied on text or encrypted messages. "This is Captain Elena Mira of the Earth Alliance. We wish no conflict with the Xeltar Union. We are on a peaceful mission." Admiral Vrox laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that filled the command center. "Peaceful? You dare enter our domain and speak of peace?" He gave the order to initiate a show of force. The frontline ships powered up their main cannons, ready to obliterate the tiny human fleet. But before they could fire, the humans did something unexpected. Instead of retreating or surrendering, the human ships aligned themselves into a defensive stance, and their ships began to emit a low-frequency pulse. The pulse was not a weapon, but a form of electronic warfare that the Xeltar had never seen. It subtly interfered with the targeting systems of the Xeltar ships. Confusion spread through the Xeltar fleet. Admiral Vrox's confident smirk faded as he witnessed his mighty ships struggling to lock onto the human vessels. "Enhance our systems! Break through their interference!" he barked. But the human technology was unexpectedly sophisticated. Captain Mira's voice came again, calm and composed. "We've come prepared, Admiral Vrox. We know what you're capable of. Let's avoid unnecessary bloodshed." The standoff continued, with the Xeltar trying to recalibrate their systems, while the human ships maintained their defensive posture, their pulse steadily disrupting the might of the Xeltar. Admiral Vrox stood silent, watching the screens as his fleet, which had never faced resistance like this, struggled to gain the upper hand. The humans, it seemed, were not as primitive as they had been presumed. This encounter was the beginning of something new, something unforeseen in the galaxy. The terror of the galaxy had finally met their match, not in might, but in wit and resolve. As the stalemate dragged on, Vrox knew this encounter would change the course of their campaign. For the first time, the Xeltar faced an opponent who could challenge their reign of terror, and the entire galaxy watched, waiting to see the outcome of this unprecedented confrontation. On board the flagship of the Earth Alliance fleet, Captain Elena Mira surveyed the situation with an intense focus. Her crew, a diverse group of the best minds from across the human territories, worked feverishly to maintain the electronic pulse that kept the Xeltar targeting systems at bay. The bridge was a hive of activity, each officer and technician playing their crucial part in this daring standoff. "Keep the pulse steady. Increase output by 7%. Let's push their systems to the limit," Captain Mira instructed her chief engineer, Lieutenant Harrow, who nodded and relayed the commands swiftly. In the depths of Xeltar space, Admiral Vrox was grappling with the unprecedented challenge. The humans' unexpected resistance was not just a technical nuisance, it was a strategic embarrassment. His ships, designed for overwhelming force and swift victory, were stalled by a species considered technologically inferior. "Admiral, we are detecting fluctuations in the human pulse. They are adapting faster than we can recalibrate," Commander Tael reported, his tone laced with disbelief. Vrox's eyes narrowed. "Deploy scouts! I want a closer look at their ships. Find a weakness." Meanwhile, Captain Mira was already steps ahead, anticipating the Xelthar's next move. "Prepare for a possible close encounter. Defensive teams stand by. I want all non-essential personnel secure," she ordered. Her voice was calm, but the gravity of the situation was not lost on her crew. As the Xelthar scouts approached, cloaked in stealth technology, the human fleet activated a secondary defensive measure, a network of drones that formed a protective barrier around their ships. The drones, equipped with advanced sensory equipment, detected the approaching Xelthar scouts and sent out targeted disruptions to unveil them. One by one, the cloaked Xelthar ships became visible, their stealth advantage neutralized. The human drones swarmed the scouts, unleashing electromagnetic pulses that fried their external sensors. Back on the Xelthar flagship, Admiral Vrox received the disheartening news. His scouts had been compromised, and their cloaking technology rendered useless. "How are they doing this?" he growled, his patience wearing thin. "Sir, it appears the humans have prepared for every one of our standard tactical maneuvers. Their adaptive capabilities are unlike anything we've encountered," one of the Xelthar analysts chimed in, her voice tense with the stress of the unexpected resistance. Frustrated, but not defeated, Admiral Vrox contemplated his options. A direct assault was becoming less viable by the moment, and the Xelthar pride was at stake. He needed a different approach, a way to outsmart the humans at their own game. "Prepare a communication link to the human flagship. It's time we negotiate," Vrox decided, his tone resigned yet cunning. He understood that in this rare instance, brute force might not secure the victory. Across the void, the tension between the two fleets hung like a dense fog, both sides poised at the brink of conflict, yet bound in a precarious negotiation. The bridge of the Xelthar flagship was bathed in a harsh red light, reflecting the heightened alert status as Admiral Vrox faced Captain Mira through the communications link. "Captain, your tactics are commendable, but you must understand, the Xelthar do not typically negotiate. Why should we start with you?" Vrox's voice was gruff, his demeanor imposing. Captain Mira, standing confidently before the screen, replied, "Because, Admiral, what you see today is not just a fleet, but a representation of human resilience and ingenuity. We offer not just resistance, but also partnership." Vrox scoffed at the notion, yet intrigue flickered in his eyes. "Partnership? And what can humans offer to the mighty Xelthar? We have technologies and strategies that can benefit your people, just as we have shown today. Our electronic warfare capabilities are just the beginning. Think beyond this conflict to a galaxy where Xelthar and humans share knowledge and territory," Mira proposed, her words carefully chosen to appeal to the Xelthar's notorious ambition. Admiral Vrox pondered this, his brow furrowing under the weight of this unprecedented proposal. "And what do you expect in return for this sharing?" "Safe passage through Xelthar-controlled space, access to trade routes, and a non-aggression pact. We seek peace, Admiral, and prosperity for all," Mira responded, her gaze steady and unyielding. The idea of a peaceful accord was alien to the Xelthar way of life, which had always revolved around domination and subjugation. Yet the stalemate forced Vrox to consider the potential benefits of such an alliance. A temporary truce could indeed be advantageous, especially to study and perhaps assimilate the humans' advanced electronic technologies. "Very well, Captain Mira. I will consider your proposal," Vrox finally conceded, not fully committed but intrigued enough to stall the conflict. "However, know this, any sign of deceit, and we will resume hostilities with full force." Mira nodded in understanding. "We expect no less, Admiral. Let's take this time to build trust, not test it." As the communication channel closed, an uneasy silence settled over both fleets. The human crew breathed a collective sigh of relief, though they remained vigilant, aware that the truce was fragile. On the human flagship, Captain Mira convened with her senior staff. "Stay sharp, everyone. We've bought some time, but this is just the beginning. We need to prepare for all possible outcomes, including the breakdown of negotiations." Lieutenant Harrow, her chief engineer, chimed in. "I'll ensure our electronic defenses are at full strength. If they study our technology, they might find a way to counter it." "Good. And let's also keep an eye on any Xelthar movements. They'll want to test our limits," Mira added, her mind racing through scenarios. Meanwhile, Admiral Vrox convened his own war council, laying out the terms of the human proposal. "We will use this truce to our advantage. Analyze everything we learned about their technology today. Prepare our scientists and strategists. We must not be outsmarted in our own realm." The council nodded in agreement, each member already plotting the next move in this high-stakes chess game. As both leaders strategized, the rest of the galaxy watched and waited. The encounter between the Xelthar and the humans had shifted something fundamental in the cosmic order. A new chapter in interstellar relations was beginning to unfold, marked not by the sound of weapons fire, but by the cautious words of diplomats and strategists. The future remained uncertain, but one thing was clear: the galaxy would never be the same. Under the temporary truce, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. In the weeks that followed, the human and Xelthar fleets maintained a careful distance, orbiting a neutral star system agreed upon for their tentative discussions. This star, a flickering beacon of yellow and orange, cast long shadows over the diplomatic shuttles that traveled between the two fleets. Admiral Vrox, who had begun to grudgingly respect the tactical acumen of the humans, oversaw the exchange of information with a wary eye. "Ensure all data is encrypted, and monitor for any breaches. If the humans are as cunning as they appear, they will attempt to gather more than we offer," he instructed his security team. Captain Mira, on the other hand, approached the exchange with a blend of optimism and caution. Her team worked around the clock to prepare detailed presentations on human technology, omitting sensitive information that could compromise their security. "Our goal is to foster trust, but keep our aces close. We're walking a fine line here," she reminded her staff. The initial exchanges were technical, focusing on agriculture and medicine, areas that posed the least threat to security but offered substantial benefits. The Xelthar were particularly intrigued by human advancements in genetic crop modifications, which promised to solve food scarcity issues on several of their border colonies. As trust slowly built, more significant technology transfers were put on the table. The Xelthar shared their propulsion technology, which was superior to anything humans had developed. In return, humans offered insights into their electronic warfare systems, but with certain limitations to safeguard their own fleet. During a critical meeting aboard the neutral station, Admiral Vrox and Captain Mira met face-to-face for the first time, without screens between them. The room was stark, illuminated only by the light of the nearby star, reflecting off the metallic surfaces of the conference table. "Captain Mira, your people are skilled negotiators. I did not expect to find common ground with humans," Vrox admitted, his tone bordering on respectful. "And I find your willingness to engage in dialogue a sign of wisdom, not weakness, Admiral," Mira responded, her eyes meeting his squarely. It was during these dialogues that a third party, previously unnoticed, began to make their move. The Skal, a rogue group opposed to the Xelthar's expansionist policies, saw the budding alliance as a threat to their operations. Using the distraction provided by the negotiations, they launched a series of stealth attacks on outlying Xelthar supply routes. When news of the attacks reached the conference room, Vrox's first instinct was suspicion. "You stretch our forces thin under the guise of peace," he accused, turning swiftly towards Mira. Mira, however, was just as surprised. "Admiral, we have nothing to gain from breaking our truce. These attacks must be the work of another faction," she asserted, her team quickly pulling up data to support her claim. Tensions escalated quickly as both leaders returned to their fleets. Vrox, struggling between the newfound respect for Mira and his duty to protect Xelthar interests, ordered his intelligence officers to verify her claims. Meanwhile, Mira offered assistance in tracking the rogue elements, sending human scouts to join the Xelthar in their hunt. As both fleets collaborated to uncover the collaboration between the human and Xelthar fleets to track down the Skal attackers was a complex dance of coordination and mistrust. The joint task force, consisting of both Xelthar and human vessels, moved through contested territories, their sensors sweeping vast expanses of space for signs of the elusive Skal. Captain Mira and Admiral Vrox maintained an open channel throughout the operation, sharing intelligence and coordinating their fleet's movements. Despite the Admiral's lingering suspicions, the effectiveness of their combined efforts started to foster a begrudging mutual respect. "Admiral, we've intercepted communications that might be from the Skal. They're encrypted, but we have experts working on them," Mira reported during one of their strategy sessions. "Send us the data. Our cryptologists will work on it as well," Vrox responded, his tone less confrontational than in past communications. The urgency of the situation made it clear that neither side could afford to let old prejudices dictate their actions. Meanwhile, on a remote asteroid belt, a small human tech team, under heavy Xelthar protection, set up a listening post. Their goal was to capture and decode Skal transmissions using a combination of human ingenuity and Xelthar technology. The atmosphere among the team was tense, as the stakes were high, not just for the success of their mission, but for the future of human-Xelthar relations. As the teams worked tirelessly, a breakthrough came. The human technicians managed to crack part of the encryption, revealing the location of a potential Skal base. Without hesitation, Mira and Vrox coordinated a joint strike force. "Admiral, are we ready to proceed?" Mira asked, her image flickering on the holographic display in the Xelthar command center. "We are. Your lead on this," Vrox acknowledged, signaling his tactical officers to follow the human fleet's guidance. The strike was swift. The combined fleet caught the Skal by surprise, crippling their operations within hours. As the dust settled, the evidence gathered from the base cleared any suspicions about human involvement in the attacks, much to Vrox's relief. Back on their respective ships, Mira and Vrox debriefed their teams. "This was a test of our alliance, and you all handled it with exceptional professionalism," Mira commended her crew. Vrox, addressing his own officers, was more reflective. "We have learned much from the humans. Their strategic minds are as sharp as their technology. We must continue this partnership, but remain vigilant." In the aftermath, the human and Xelthar diplomats prepared for a formal treaty signing. The success of their joint operation had paved the way for a historic agreement that could potentially shift the balance of power in the galaxy. On the eve of the signing, Mira visited Vrox aboard his flagship. The two commanders, once adversaries, now stood before a window overlooking the vastness of space. "Tomorrow will mark a new beginning, Admiral," Mira said, her voice soft but clear. "Yes, Captain, a new beginning indeed," Vrox replied, his gaze fixed on the stars. "But let us not forget the lessons of these past weeks. Trust is hard-earned and easily broken." Mira nodded in agreement. "We will move forward, together with eyes open and shields ready." As the starlight glinted off their ships, the future seemed filled with possibilities. The treaty would not just be a pact of non-aggression, but the foundation of a strategic alliance, one built on shared risks and mutual benefits. Yet both leaders knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges as old as the stars themselves. As the dawn of the treaty signing approached, the galaxy watched with bated breath. The agreement between the Xelthar and humans, poised to reshape interstellar politics, symbolized not just an end to hostilities, but also the beginning of a cooperative future. Delegations from various planetary systems and alliances gathered, witnessing what many thought impossible. Former foes standing together, ready to sign a pact that promised peace and mutual prosperity. In the grand hall of the neutral space station, where the ceremony was to take place, Admiral Vrox and Captain Mira reviewed the final document. The treaty was comprehensive, covering military cooperation, trade agreements, and shared technological research. Mira pointed to a clause, suggesting a small amendment, and Vrox nodded in approval. The atmosphere was cooperative, but the weight of their decisions hung heavily in the air. "Today, we changed the course of history," Mira said, her voice steady as she handed the revised treaty back to the legal advisors. Vrox, looking out at the gathered crowd, felt a rare flicker of hope. Indeed, Captain. Let us hope history remembers this moment favorably. As the ceremony commenced, representatives from each side took turns speaking about the importance of this alliance. The speeches were filled with promises of a brighter future, but also acknowledgments of past conflicts and the long journey of reconciliation ahead. Finally, the moment arrived for Mira and Vrox to sign the treaty. Flashes from cameras lit up the room as they put pen to paper, their signatures sealing the commitment. The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing through the chamber and across the communication channels that broadcast the event galaxy-wide. However, even in this moment of triumph, the seeds of dissent were germinating in the shadows. Not all were pleased with the new alliance. The Skal, though weakened, still harbored resentment and plans for disruption. Similarly, hardliners within the Xelthar ranks viewed the treaty as a betrayal of their imperial heritage, plotting in the dark corners of space stations and warships. In the weeks following the signing, the Human Xelthar Alliance began to implement the terms of their agreement. Joint patrols were established, and collaborative research projects commenced. The initial results were promising, with trade routes flourishing and border conflicts at an all-time low. Yet the true test of the alliance came when a Xelthar patrol, operating near a disputed sector, was ambushed by a rogue faction of Skal pirates. The patrol, equipped with human technology and Xelthar weaponry, managed to send a distress signal before being overwhelmed. Responding swiftly, a nearby human fleet diverted from their route to assist. The collaboration during the skirmish was a critical demonstration of the Alliance's strength. The human ships, using their advanced electronic warfare systems, helped disable the Skal ships, allowing the Xelthar to capture the attackers. Following the incident, Admiral Vrox addressed the Alliance in a widely broadcast message. This skirmish was not just an attack on the Xelthar, but on our new way of life. Let this be a reminder of why we stand together. Our unity is our strength. Captain Mira, standing beside Vrox during the address, added, "Today, our alliance faced a trial by fire and emerged stronger. We will continue to face challenges, but together, we are building a resilient and peaceful galaxy." The message resonated across star systems, bolstering support for the alliance. However, the undercurrents of unrest and the lurking